Hello everyone, welcome to another Python video. We're going to be solving this question from the 2016 Canadian Computing Competition. This was the Junior 1 question called Tournament Selection. And reads as follows. Each player in a tournament plays 6 games and there are no ties. The tournament director places a player in groups based on the result of the games follow. If a player wins 5 or 6 games, they are placed in group 1. If a player wins 3 or 4 games, they are placed in group 2. If a player wins 1 or 2 games, they are placed in group 3. And if they don't win any games, they are eliminated from the tournament. We are to write a program to determine which group a player has placed in. Okay, so first we're going to handle our inputs. In a program like this, we can easily write 6 inputs to handle the games, such as we can say game 1 input, like if you wanted to prompt, we can say enter result. We can say enter game 1 result. All right, we're going to be assuming that game result will be either W or L, and that will be stated more in the actual competition webpage. All right, so we can write this out 6 times to do this, but here, just for fun, what I'm going to introduce is the following. I'm just going to comment that out, and we're going to use a while loop. Actually, no, let's use a for loop. We're going to say for underscore in range of 6. This just means that we are not using the for loops iterating variable. So most often Python programmers, if you're not using that value, called the iterating variable for the for loop, we're just going to leave it as an underscore. And we're going to do range of 6. Range of 6 generates 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in computer memory as a iterable set of integers. Now, this is really nice because this means that the for loop is only going to run 6 times. Okay, and then I'm going to create a variable outside of this called the win counter set to 0. Okay, and inside, I'm going to be running the exact same, logic to calculate how many wins that the player has gotten so that we can actually place them in the proper group that they belong to. So we're going to do the following. We're going to say the current result, which is a variable, is going to be set to input of enter the game result. And then we're going to make it a little more fun. We're going to go F. And we're going to say, let's actually use this value. So I'm going to actually put that as a value of I. And we're going to say I plus 1. All right, so it's going to say enter the game of I plus 1 result. Since it starts at 0, it's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, and I want that colon inside like so. All right, and just to show you how this works, I'm going to save this and run my program just to show you how my for loop is working so far. So right now, at the very beginning, it's going to output game 1 result, and I'm going to put W. W, 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 W. This player was really good. They won all their games, 6 in a row. That's right, but we were able to change game 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 by doing a formatted string inside our input statement and increasing our I value by 1. Now, most programmers will often say that you do not want to do variable edits inside a formatted string, but in a scenario like this where we want to change the message of our input prompt, this seems valid enough to do so. Okay. Now, every time we get this current result, what I'm going to do is say the following. If current result is equivalent to a character of W, we're going to say that our win counter is going to be equal, going up by 1. This is equivalent to win counter plus is equal to win counter what it was prior plus 1. This is called the add and assign operator, right? So we get to apply the 1 to the win counter and assign it with the new result. And basically, the logic is that I don't need to really count for the losses. If I count the number of wins that the player has gotten, I can determine which group they can be placed in. All right, so right here, I'm just going to say end of for loop. And then here, we're going to do our little processing. Okay, so I'm going to say group set to 0. And I'm going to say if the player's win counter is greater or equal to 5. Actually, let's go greater than 4. We're going to say group is set to 1. I've initialized group to 0 just in case. It's a good programming habit where if you're going to have a variable and it's going to change within either a for loop or a while loop or even within your conditional clauses, I want to initialize it prior and then change its value or update its value as I go on. So this is called initialization. Creating it for future use. Okay. So here, if our win counter is greater than 4, we're going to go to group 1. We're going to use an elif statement here. We're saying if the first statement was false, that's why there's the L part, but we still have to consider and evaluate another Boolean condition. That's why we're using an elif statement. And we're saying that these are related. As long as this one was false, I should be checking this next condition, which is win counter is greater than 2. For us to get to here, our win counter has to be less than 4, but greater than 2. In this case, they're going to be placed in group 2. And then we're going to go elif. We're going to say win counter is greater than 0. At this point, they have won either 1 or 2 games only. So we can say that they have been placed in group 3. And we can place it like so. Group 1 has been updated, group 2 has been updated, and group 3 has been updated like that. And then for our output, we're going to have a condition-based output as following. I haven't done the very last portion where you could technically place an else statement there, but I thought this would be safer because we can write an output like this. We can say if group is equivalent to 0, then we can say print see, the player is eliminated. Okay. We can then do else. We can say print. Now I'm going to do a formatted string. The player is placed, let's spell that correctly, in group, period. Now I can just have one overarching print statement by going into the else and just printing the value of the variable called group to place the player in its proper group. So in this question here, I was able to show you an alternative way to get input multiple times by having, because it felt repetitive for us to, let's say, for example, we were to do this. See, and if we did 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, we would have to track 6 different variables and check if the game 1 variable was a W or an L and so on. It would be a lot of input to handle. Whereas here, I have written a logic where instead of having 6 different variables, let's just continuously update this variable called win counter based on this changing variable of current result. And then based on their input, we'll be able to determine what group they can follow after they're placed in when we get into our processing. Okay, so I'm just gonna turn that off, and we're not going to need this one anymore. Right, so the alternative of this was using and taking advantage of a for loop. And the reason why we did a for loop and for I in range of 6, because we know that since this function generates 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in computer memory, we know for sure that this for loop is only going to loop 6 times, and we can now utilize this iterating variable that we determined to call I in our formatted string, where we can put a really nice prompt of entering the game 1 result and whatnot. In our conditional statements here, there is a reason why I only use greater than symbols here, because I don't want to do greater or equal to, where I don't want my Python program to check is this value greater or equal to. That's like 2 operations, where I can just check that if win counter is greater than 4, I know for sure that since they have won 5 or 6 games, for sure, I know they can be placed in group 1. But if that is false, I know that they can only be placed in group 2 or 3 because win counter is either 3 or lower than 3. So it's either 4 or less than 4. And if this statement is true, I know for sure win counter is either 3 or 4. So we can place them in group 2, and the same logic follows if they have only won a game or one or 2 games. Okay, All right, so that was a really nice intro to using for loops to do repetitive inputs, and using if elif statements and if else statements in your code to help you do different pathways to your code. And as always, thank you for watching and stay classy.